At 12:47 a.m., rain slicked the concrete corridors of a low-income apartment block on the edge of downtown Chicago, a place where noise carried and help arrived late, if it arrived at all. Inside Unit 12C, Janelle Carter knelt barefoot against her door, one hand braced on the lock, the other shaking around her phone as a man's fist struck the wood with slow, measured force. "Open up, Janelle," Mark Hayes said from the hallway, his voice calm enough to be terrifying. "You know this ends easier if you do." Her screen lit up mid-dial, an accident. A name she never meant to touch. Adrian Blackwood. The call connected. "Janelle." His voice was sharp with surprise. "Why are you calling me at?" "He's outside," she whispered, breath breaking. "Please." "He won't leave." Another knock, closer, harder. The sound of someone who believed the door, and the woman behind it, already belonged to him. On the other end of the line, a pause, then movement. "Stay exactly where you are," Adrian said, the warmth gone, replaced by command. "Give me your address. Now." 4 years, Janelle had been taught to stay quiet, to doubt herself, to survive by disappearing. Tonight, with power pressing in from the hallway and fear tightening her chest, she did the one thing she was never supposed to do. She asked to be believed. And the wrong call connected her to the only person who would answer. What happens next will expose control, courage, and a collision of power that no one sees coming. Subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales. And don't look away. This story doesn't let go. The hallway camera flickered as Mark shifted his weight, the faint hum of the fluorescent light casting his shadow long across the worn carpet. Janelle pressed her back to the door, her breath trembling in the quiet between knocks. That silence was always the worst part. His ability to turn menace into a whisper, to make fear feel like inevitability. She held the phone to her ear, clinging to Adrian's voice like it was the only structure still standing. "Janelle, stay with me," he said, already striding through the lobby of his building. Rainwater hit the marble floor in sharp droplets as he pushed through the glass doors. "I'm coming straight to you." Mark tapped the door with one deliberate knuckle. "We're not doing this," he murmured. "You don't get to ignore me. You owe me a conversation." Her throat tightened. "I don't owe you anything. That's not what you said for 3 years. The venom in his reminder forced her eyes shut. She remembered the way he used to twist her achievements into accidents, her instincts into overreactions, her intelligence into a liability. 3 years of hearing that she should let him think for her. 3 years of unlearning who she was. Adrian's tone sharpened. "Janelle, answer me. Is he still there?" "Yes," she whispered. "He won't stop." A quiet curse left Adrian as he moved quickly through the rain-soaked street. "Security is on the way. Please too. Keep talking to me." She tried to steady her voice. "I didn't mean to call you." "I know," he replied. "But you did. And I'm glad you did." Another knock. Not loud. Not rushed. A reminder that he could do this all night. "Janelle," Mark said softly. "You're being dramatic. We're just talking. Open the door." Her fingers curled into the carpet. "Leave." "No." His refusal sliced through the air, simple and absolute. Then footsteps sounded from the stairwell, Mr. Harris moving faster than she'd ever heard him. "Sir," he barked, voice firm. "Step away from that door." Mark turned, jaw tightening. "This is personal. And this is a secured building," Harris countered. "Back up. Now." For a moment, Mark's eyes glinted with something cold enough to freeze the hallway. "Fine," he said. But he didn't leave. He just waited at the end of the corridor, pacing like a predator forced to take one step back before lunging forward again. When police arrived minutes later, he smiled, actually smiled, and said, "Just a misunderstanding." She gets emotional. The officers exchanged a glance, uncertain. No threat, no visible harm, nothing they could act on yet. But Adrian arrived seconds after, rain clinging to his hair, his expression unmistakably furious. He stepped between Janelle's door and Mark with calm, lethal precision. "You're done here." Mark's smile faltered. This is none of your business. It became my business, Adrian replied. The moment you terrified one of my employees. And the moment you showed up here after weeks of stalking her. The officers tensed. Sir, is this true? Adrian met their eyes with the authority of a man used to briefing federal boards. It is. And tomorrow morning you'll receive documented evidence. Mark scoffed. Evidence of what? Her fantasies. Janelle opened the door. Her face was pale, but her eyes were clear. Your messages. Notes. The spyware you installed on my computer. Should I go on? Something flickered across Mark's face. Not fear, but irritation that she had dared to speak while others were watching. Baby, you're confused, he started. Adrian stepped closer, tone perilously calm. Don't call her that. The officers separated them, warning both to keep distance. Mark finally retreated down the hall, but not without delivering one last quiet threat. This isn't over. The door clicked shut behind him. Inside the apartment, Janelle sank onto the couch. Rain pattered through the open window, mixing with her shaky breathing. Adrian stood near the doorway, expression softening. You did everything right tonight. I felt like I was falling apart. He shook his head. No, you reached out. That's strength. For the first time she believed him. Hours later, when the building finally grew quiet, Adrian noticed the stack of financial documents on her desk. He didn't speak at first. He simply read, slowly, carefully, each page turning into a growing storm behind his eyes. This analysis. Did you build this yourself? She nodded. His jaw tightened. You caught a pattern our entire department missed. I was going to tell someone, she murmured. But I kept hearing his voice saying I'd embarrass myself. Adrian set the papers down. Janelle, you have talent people spend years trying to fake. And he crushed it because he knew exactly how powerful you could become. Her breath trembled at the truth she'd always been afraid to say aloud. Tomorrow, Adrian said, I'm assigning a team to protect you. And I'm launching a full internal review. What if he keeps coming? Then he'll meet consequences he can't manipulate. The next morning, evidence flooded in, messages, footage, timestamps, logs showing unauthorized access to her computer. Adrian forwarded everything to legal, and within days Mark was fired from his firm and flagged in multiple databases for investigation. When he tried to retaliate by leaking company documents to competitors, the trail led straight back to him. Federal agents knocked on his door before sunrise. Neighbors watched as he was escorted out in handcuffs, fury carved across his face. But the most defining moment came weeks later, in a crowded courtroom. Mark sat at the defense table, posture stiff, the charm gone. Janelle stood opposite him, telling her story with steady clarity, not as a victim, but as someone reclaiming the narrative he had tried to steal. You targeted me because you knew I was talented, she said. And you made me believe that talent was a threat. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Mark's attorney tried to twist her words, but she didn't waver. Every point she made was supported by evidence. Emails, recordings, timestamps, and her own detailed documentation. The prosecutor laid out the rest. Espionage, unauthorized access, intimidation, harassment. When Mark finally lost his composure and slammed his fist on the table, shouting that she was nothing without him, the courtroom fell silent. That moment sealed the verdict. When the judge read the guilty counts, Janelle didn't cheer. She didn't collapse. She simply exhaled long, steady, free. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered. Adrian waited near the steps, hands in his pockets, watching her with a quiet pride that didn't need words. You did it, he said when she reached him. We did it, she corrected. Life shifted after that. Her work grew sharper, her instincts bolder. Investors asked for her input. Departments leaned on her analysis. And slowly, she rebuilt a version of herself untouched by Mark's shadow. But the final turn came at the quarterly board meeting. The room was filled with executives, analysts, and stakeholders. Numbers flashed across screens. Discussions circled around risk projections, flawed assumptions, and potential losses. Until Janelle spoke. "Those projections are incorrect," she said. "The consolidation structure hides liabilities that will surface in under 2 years." Silence fell. She walked them step by step through the pattern, clear, concise, irrefutable. A murmur spread across the room as her conclusions landed with the force of truth no one else had seen. Adrian watched her, not with surprise, but with certainty. This was the woman he'd always believed she could become. When the board dismissed the flawed proposal and turned to her for a solution, she realized something profound. She was no longer invisible. She was leading. And somewhere across the city, in a federal detention center, Mark Hayes learned the news from a small television mounted to the wall. He watched her name scroll across the screen, her analysis credited with saving the company millions. His jaw clenched, the reality settling like iron. He had tried to break her. Instead, she had risen higher than he had ever allowed her to imagine. And she wasn't finished yet. Because the next confrontation, the one that would end him completely, was still coming. When the boardroom lights dimmed and the last chart faded from the screen, Janelle remained in her seat for a moment, letting the quiet settle. Not long ago, she would have rushed out before anyone noticed her. Now, colleagues stopped to ask for her insight, and investors addressed her by name with a respect she once believed belonged to other people. She didn't feel triumphant, she felt steady, like someone finally standing on ground that had always been hers. Adrian walked over, not with urgency, but with the calm of someone who trusted what she had become. "They followed your recommendation," he said. "Every single one." She smiled, a small, certain expression that didn't need validation. "Because the numbers were honest. That's why they listened." Outside the glass wall, the city shimmered under a late sunset, warm colors stretching across the skyline. 4 years she'd moved through these streets trying to stay unseen. Now she understood something simple yet powerful. Silence had never protected her. Truth had. And truth had carried her farther than fear ever could. As she stepped out of the building, a breeze lifted her hair, and she caught her reflection in the lobby window. Confident, grounded, unafraid. Not defined by what she survived but by the choices she made after. If this story speaks to you, don't forget to like, share, and help Canada's Heartfelt Tales grow by subscribing. Your support helps bring more stories of strength and hope to life.